It is. And I used to be Sunday song leader, so bless your heart, because I understand. Well, good morning. How are you, Springfield? Yeah. You know, I arrived yesterday, and it was like 53 degrees, and I threw off my shawl and my jacket, and I woke up to 20 degrees. Like, God really keeps you guys on your toes here. My goodness. So I am Arabella, which everyone always pronounces wrong. So let's start with Arabella. Arabella. Say it. Arabella. And the importance of Arabella is it's actually my adopted name once I started my spiritual journey because it means the answered prayer. So I tend to travel a lot. I've been all over the world ministering in various ways, healing people on the streets and whatnot. So that right there, by saying Arabella, amen. I'm done here. Okay. We're good. And today's talk is living your spiritual truth. And I got to chat with some of you when I walked in, and thank you so much for your graciousness and your love. I can feel it. I feel it home. I do. And I don't always say that, okay? I don't. Because living our spiritual truth is very different than talking about our spiritual truth. So to get me here today, I started on a journey January 3rd in Northern California, near San Francisco, Berkeley area, University of Berkeley, some of you might know, UC Berkeley, that area. And I was told to send out a few emails as like little seeds, and whoever responded would be where I am to go. Sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? But I do that. And guess who responded? Springfield. And Reverend Eliza is actually very, very good friends with my boss at the Unity that I work for part-time. I do digital marketing media for them. They're very good friends, and they hadn't communicated or anything. So that right there is living your spiritual truth. Paying attention to not just what we've read in the book, not what we've learned about in the class, but actually walking our talk. That's how I got here today. And I get to see all these beautiful faces in Springfield. And I'm the one that's blessed by it. So, you know, in Sundays we talk about the word. We talk about the principles. And from my experience, doing this now full-time for a decade, I realized I've been traveling a lot of times. We take all these principles in, all these wonderful prayers, maybe we visioned together, meditated, and we walk out the door, and life happens. Let me tell you, I actually was in a financial freedom class many years ago, and that's what we had done. We had talked about all these principles of prosperity. We'd meditated together. We stood up in front of each other and affirmed each other as being prosperous. I was so, do you guys know that high that you get from taking a class and you're like, wow, you're filled up. Your soul is filled up. And I got in my car and I was so high on God and prosperity, I ended up getting a speeding ticket for going 83 miles an hour in a 65. Life happened, right? And life keeps happening. Even though we get filled up on Sundays and on our classes and connecting with people, life is going to still happen. At that time, I was really angry. What? How could this happen? I am so, I'm practicing the principles. Notice the word practicing. That's going to be important. Because that's what we do. We practice the principles. But then eventually a shift happens. How does that shift start happening? Where you go from the high of class and the spiritual to getting a speeding ticket and screaming at God, how could you do this? Because we are all souls having a human experience. That doesn't stop. And awareness starts taking place as you practice the principles, understanding, yes, in my human experience, I'm standing in Springfield, Illinois, of all places. I'm not sure how I got here, in front of a bunch of strangers. However, my soul had to be here to talk to you. I'm highly aware of both, and that is the shift that ends up taking place. I'm going to give you some of the tips and things that I've done to get to this place of being able to do that. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to share? So at the time I got the speeding ticket, I hadn't fully answered the call. That was part of the problem. Here's the thing. We often get messages from God. Hello. And what do? We don't answer the call, or we let voicemail pick it up. Right? We do. I've seen a lot of, and I did it too. I've known for a very long time that I was to minister to the world, that I was to care for others, to heal others, but I would never answer the call. I ignored the call. I would say, oh, they're the Holy One. Karen over there. Karen Kelly is the Holy One, not me. I actually recently was in another unity on my travels, and I was sitting in the third row, right about there in the center. And someone came in late to the service. And I kind of like my space a little bit. And I like being on the end. So I had my belongings like on the chair next to me, okay? So I would have my space. And someone came into service late. No, it was not crowded. There was plenty of seats. And this person came in loudly. The door slammed. So we're getting ready to go into meditation. I'm sitting there, and guess where she wanted to sit? Next to me. And she wanted to sit right where my jacket and my purse and everything were. And even though there was plenty, she's like, no, I need to sit here. And stepped on my foot on the way in. Okay. So I'm just breathing. I'm like, okay, there's going to be something from this experience. I'm going to be love. And at the moment, especially when she stepped on the foot, it's really hard to be love right now. That's how I felt. In my human experience, I felt like I was being violated a little bit, this person coming into my space. That was the human experience. But I checked in with soul, and I stayed there in the heart, and stayed there, and stayed there. So guess what? I happened to be the guest speaker the next Sunday. And guess who was sitting in the audience? And afterwards, she kind of shyly came up to me with her head down, and she says, I didn't know you were a minister. And in that moment, I asked her very calmly, and I made sure I took a nice deep breath, and that's something to do when you are having an experience. It's okay to step away, to breathe, and get into your heart space. I said, would you have behaved better if I had been wearing my minister t-shirt that day? I was giggling on the inside, but I think that she got the lesson. The thing is, it wasn't about me being the Holy One because I'm the minister. She had forgotten she was the Holy One too, to respect the other people during the service, to respect me as another holy being. And in the human experience, a lot of times we point the finger to, oh no, they're the Holy One. My loves, you are the Holy One. You that play the piano and laugh and smile, and you that sing. You just sitting here not saying a word. You that's been here forever, Karen, bless your heart. Like, we're all the holy ones. And that, for me, was the major takeaway from getting a speeding ticket. And I began answering the call. And that call was owning that I'm the Holy One too, and acting like it, and walking my talk. So where does the shift happen? Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith says, it takes practice to take on the principles. Simply, it just takes practice. Now, I often say it takes lots and lots of baby steps, lots. Like I said, it's been a decade that I have full-time been traveling, working on myself. And when I think of baby steps, I don't know if anyone knows the movie. There's a movie called What About Bob? Okay, I see some heads shaking with Bill Murray in it. And when I saw that movie, it reminded me so much of me because to be here today, if you knew the backstory, you might be a little, because I was very much like that character, What About Bob? And if you haven't seen it, he was living in so much anxiety that he couldn't function in life. And so he went to a therapist, and the therapist, Richard Dreyfuss, had a book about baby steps. And so throughout the movie, Bob, the main character by Bill Murray, takes baby steps. Baby steps out the door. Baby steps to the elevator. Baby steps onto the bus. And at that time, I remember watching that, I had such bad anxiety, mentally and physically stuff going on, I couldn't leave my house. I had 0 friends. I was in a marriage that had run its course many decades prior. And so when I watched What About Bob and Baby Steps, it literally is what saved my life, changed my life. Let me start walking the principles. And you try it. You try practicing those principles in safe spaces like Unity of Springfield, where you know you are loved here and you are safe here. Compassion lives here. You getting to express your truth here. Baby steps. So it's a funny movie. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. But it really is true. There's not some great big thing from going to reading about it in the 5 Principles book published by Unity Worldwide to traveling the world. Took lots of baby steps with compassion. I would really like to stress compassion today, because I've met a lot of people, and something that I see recurring is a lack of compassion for us. We have forgotten we're the Holy One. We have forgotten we are love, and it's time to remember right now. So one really big example of living my spiritual truth, and the reason I feel God wants me to share this story is Sorry, I'm like getting all. I don't know. I think it's going to touch somebody's heart. That's my hope. And yeah, I might need Kleenex, Karen. Because when we live our truth, like, we're vulnerable, something that I was so uncomfortable with for so long. And I've met a lot of others that are uncomfortable with being vulnerable. We're not really taught in society to be vulnerable, are we? Keep it together is what we're taught. So, in more recent history, one of my journeys of living my spiritual truth took place during the pandemic, which changed a lot of our lives. Even though we've tried to go back to it, it's changed a lot of us, our thinking, and we had time to introspect and think about relationship and connection and all of that. So during that time period, right before it began, I ended up going from being very, very active in a spiritual community in Northern California. I was the song leader. I was leading community groups, teaching classes, leading Sunday service, a lot of things that I see a lot of myself in Karen. Thank you for your service. And while I was singing, yes, and sometimes we laughed, and that's okay, because I'm all about joy and laughter. That's life. And it's not always perfect. I was singing. I sang 50 Sundays in a row during a 12-month span, okay? And I was having problems breathing while I was singing. The same time, my body started putting on weight, except I was still as active, and I was actually eating less. And then I was trying to climb stairs, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't even stand up long enough to lead a few songs. There was something going on in my body, and I knew it, and nobody would help me. At the same time, I was praying. I believe in prayer. Prayer works. And when we join with others in prayer, so practitioners or prayer chaplains, in different ministries, we call it different things. But I had prayer partners. I am in perfect health. I knew I was in perfect health. And guess what? 5 years later, I'm still praying for perfect health and getting sicker. It actually created a thing in me where I was very angry at God. I actually rejected God. I'm like, I've been praying. What's going on? Why are you not answering my prayer? I'm doing everything you've told me to do. So come around the pandemic time, I found myself, my muscles had atrophied, and I was so weak I was bedridden. And by that time, I had been to 9 doctors. And no one would help me. They wouldn't even run the test that I had. Can you please, I have a long history of such and such. Can you please run it? Brick wall, brick wall. So I started getting messages to go to El Paso. Now I'm near Seattle and very sick and hadn't been able to work and in bed about 22 hours a day. Go to El Paso. You kind of think, if any of you have this intuitive thing, you're in tune with it, then God gives you messages. Was I going to answer the call or not, though? Was I going to remember, oh, yeah, I can co-create with God. God's helping me here. Am I going to pay attention? God's trying to answer a prayer for me, or am I going to say, nah, I give up? So I said yes. Literally within 24 hours of me saying yes to this insane request to drive myself from Seattle to El Paso, I knew no one there. I'd never been there. And I was so sick. My body was just done. Everything began lining up, including the money to pay for it, like a miracle. I got to El Paso, and there was a little delay because the pandemic was happening, but I was guided to a specialist. I walked in the door. By the time I left that appointment, the blood tests that no one was willing to run on me were run. My antibodies that should be not above 50 were at 250. That's why my body had shut down. She's like, something else is wrong. We did a biopsy. I had thyroid cancer. And guess what? I had had thyroid cancer, she figured, for about 5 years. So, that is living your spiritual truth. It doesn't often fit into a box or a dogma or this workshop. It's trusting yourself. Some of it, is it Tony Robbins? You are the guru. I've been saying that forever. You are the guru. You are the embodiment of God. You can answer that call anytime you choose. Or keep letting it go onto the voicemail. Or just don't pick up at all. And let me tell you, I've been all over. When I did the El Paso one, literally my family thought I was crazy. If you answer the call, people will not understand intellectually. Even people in spiritual community, I've noticed, don't always understand. They're real attached to just what's in the book. So here are the 3 main things I've done. And I'm probably going to be over 20 minutes, Karen. I'm sorry. Number 1 is the power of presence. Eckhart Tolle calls it the power of now. Some of you might have heard of that. In some spiritual communities, we practice the energy and holding the knowingness of all is well at all times. When you are in the power of presence, you become the eye of the storm. You observe the chaos of life happening. You maintain the all is well. Number 2 is new thought, principles, which I've studied in various different forms from various different spiritual communities, including Unity. I was just at Unity Village a couple of days ago, actually. I like to call that replacing our stinking thinking, which always makes people laugh. I don't see any laughing here. But the replacement of stinking thinking is so powerful. I sometimes go to communities in transition, and I listen for stinking thinking. Of course, I have to take care of my stinking thinking first and foremost, okay? It's always about us first. In that observation, I noticed a community that was having financial problems. That's all they could focus on. That's all they could talk about. And I met with their accountant, who, guess what, had an immense amount of stinking thinking. In New Thought, we take the negative statement, we don't have enough, into God is my source, God is my power, we have everything that we need. Different energy there. So that was number 2. Number 1 was presence. Number 2 was really practicing New Thought. Number 3 is acceptance. And acceptance is, it is what it is. There's no, why is this person leaving? But why? Why? That's our egoic intellect wanting to know why. Spiritually, it always is what it is. We live in a sustainable universe. Sustainable universe means there's dark, there's light. Things come, they go, and when you get into allowing things to come and go, we are then living in the flow. And you're already present, so you're present in the flow. And life is really beautiful. And you end up living a life of miracles, or maybe speaking at a wonderful place like Unity of Springfield. Because that's how I got here, using the principles, walking the talk. So let's wrap this up. The Tao says the master observes the world, but trusts his inner vision. He allows things to come and go. His heart is open as the sky. Now, I actually like this one better because some people also say the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. And that would be my experience. Okay? I totally relate to that. And living your spiritual truth is about allowing yourself to not be perfect. Oops. And it's okay. We are all perfectly imperfect at all times, always. However, things reveal themselves in every day. It's perfect. So, thank you for letting me be here, and your graciousness and your love, which has fed my soul on this day. And keep baby stepping. You're the only one that knows what your spiritual truth is. Okay? It's inside of each of us. And you can answer the call. You can let it go to voicemail. Whatever. Okay? It's your experience with you that matters. That's what you're here to do. To remember that you are a soul having a human experience. So I would love it before we segue into a little bit of meditation to affirm it's from James in the Bible. Do not, can you guys read it out loud with me? I would love that. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. So let's just breathe and settle into this moment, into the infinite presence of one, into the one mind, one love, one life. Knowing that the divine spark is within us all. Knowing that we are the Holy One. Knowing that our truth is to express God in and through us. And right here and right now, this truth is bubbling within our human experience as this community transforms, as this community welcomes their new minister, as this community opens to a deeper level of love and compassion and expressing spiritual truth than they ever have before. Let us go into the silence together for a few moments. as Divine Spirit works through each of our human experiences, we find ourselves kinder and gentler. Checking in with ourselves during turmoil and asking, what would love do? Knowing that the principles we study, that we share, are manifesting through us as the physical expression of God in form. And it is good, so good, so magical, so powerful as we begin living our spiritual truth right here and right now. Amen.